Hello, class. I'd like to begin today by giving you a riddle I first heard in Michael Kimmel's 2015 TED Talk. So, a man and his son are driving on the freeway, and they're in a terrible accident. The father is killed, and the son is brought to the hospital emergency room. As they're bringing the son into the ER attending doctor sees the boy and says, "Oh, I can't treat him. That's my son." Some might wonder, how is this possible? Well, luckily, for many, the immediate answer is that the doctor is his mother. But if that's not your answer, I challenge you to think about why. Obviously, not all families look alike. Very possibly you could have two dads. I still want you to ask yourself why. And could it maybe be an unconscious bias? Everyone should know that nothing I say here will in any way downplay the struggles and hardships that men go through. I'm very sympathetic to that struggle, and I want to focus on how feminism can improve everyone's quality of life, including men's. It only makes sense that leveling the playing field, giving everyone an equal shot, is what's fair, and that should be enough reason to do it. But we haven't, though. So I want to prove that a society that holds the same expectations for and gives the same resources to men and women benefits everyone in that society. Now, I consider myself a feminist, but I didn't always. I shied away from calling myself one because I thought it meant being a radical man-hater, but that's not it. Through years of exploration and research, I've come to know that this movement is about changing our society for the better, eliminating obstacles that prevent women from reaching the same heights as men, and letting us be our authentic selves. Some people still don't believe that these obstacles are real, but gender inequality is very real. I'll first prove that gender inequality exists, explain why it's bad, and lastly, bring up some ways to start fixing it. The reality of our society today, even after decades of protest and calls for change, is that women are still oppressed. Part of why that hasn't changed in so long is that privilege can be invisible to those in possession of it. Therefore, some people have a hard time believing in or just outright deny the discrimination and microaggressions women face day to day. Now, some of you may not know what a microaggression is. It's a commonplace verbal or behavioral indignity. These can be intentional or unintentional and usually communicate hostile, derogatory, or negative attitudes towards marginalized groups. Here are some examples of common microaggressions towards women. When someone unfamiliar to a woman touches them on their low back or their upper arm or the back of their neck without any permission. It's too intimate and invasive a touch for someone that they don't know. Another extremely common situation is when women in the workplace are required to prove their qualifications on a subject repeatedly in situations where men are not. Also, one that we all hate is when a person tells another how they should behave. For example, "You should really smile more often, it makes you look very pretty." Or, "Raising your voice like that is very unfeminine." The next example many people don't like talking about, and I'd say it's less of a microaggression and much more outright aggressive and demeaning. In a report released by Lean In about women in the workplace from 2018, 35% of women experienced sexual harassment in their careers. For women that didn't conform to traditional feminine expectations, women who hold authority, women who don't identify as heterosexual, and women working in male-dominated fields, are more often the targets of sexual harassment. 45 to 55% of these women will experience sexual harassment in their careers. The bad news doesn't end there for women looking to join the workforce. Despite women making up 57% of college graduates since the 1990s and overall earning more bachelor degrees than men, they still only hold 38% of manager-level positions in America today. Women also struggle to be represented in leadership positions around the world. The CFR, or Council on Foreign Relations, tracks the amount of women in power in 193 countries. 119 of those countries have never had a woman as their head of state or government. And only 4 of the remaining 74 countries have at least 50% women on their national legislature. So women are underrepresented in government nearly everywhere in the world. This further proves that these are outdated ideas about men and women that don't represent the culture of today. Gender inequality is a part of a flawed system, and as many reasonable people would say, it's simply unfair and unjust. In a talk by Chimamanda Adichie, She said, "A man is as likely as a woman to be intelligent and creative. Our way of life has evolved, but our ideas of gender have not." As a culture, we need everyone on board to really change. So starting on a very large scale, we have countries. A country's leadership should want all its citizens to be happy, and in comparing the happiest countries from the World Happiness Report with countries having the most gender equal policies from the Global Gender Gap Report, we find that they're the same countries. The most gender equal are Iceland, Norway, Finland, and Sweden, while the 4th, 5th, and 6th happiest known countries are Iceland, Norway, and Sweden. So governments of the world, get on it. Jumping back to a personal level, it really only makes sense for men to support women in the fight for equality. If you want your life to be enriched by a close relationship with your potential children, if you want a happy life with your partner, if you don't want to be the only one financially responsible for your household, then feminism can benefit you. What I mean by this is that relationships that share their responsibilities equally, like caring for children, cooking and cleaning, and earning a steady income, have been shown to be happier and longer lasting ones. So gender equality is good for women, men, and even whole countries. How do we practice what we preach, though? How do we even start? That is best answered by another quote from Miss Adichie. "Today, there are many more opportunities for women than there were during my grandmother's time because of changes in policy, changes in law, all of which are very important. But what matters even more is our attitude, our mindset, what we believe and what we value about gender." How we get men involved in this conversation, since we need everyone involved to make change, is to make gender apparent to them. What I mean by that is that people are socialized to think about themselves in a certain way in reference to society, getting more specific the more marginalized a group because they're farther from the norm. A person may think of themselves as an Asian American woman, for example, while a man may think of himself as just an Asian American. A white woman may think of herself as just a woman, and a white man just a person even. This kind of thinking puts into place a default human, which should never happen, because we're all equal in the fact that we're all people. It can also detach those people having very few descriptors from believing that they have anything to do with gender or race or the conversations around those topics. Most likely, though, they do have a gender and an ethnicity. Reminding them of this can help engage them in supporting equality. Another thing to do is to confront any entitlement someone may have. Things like believing a woman stole their job, rather than a woman earned that job when it was no one's to begin with. Having difficult conversations with those people can help involve them further and hopefully trigger some self-reflection. This last method won't change things very quickly, but it is very effective in the long run, and it has to do with parenting. The way we raise children has a very big effect on how they behave as adults. If we can teach our children now and in the future to be more accountable for their actions, we could have less of people claiming that the way she was dressed was the reason for their behavior. In raising children, perhaps we should focus more on that child's interest than their gender. Let men enjoy cooking and sewing, and let women enjoy sports and automobiles. People should be able to be their true selves, no matter what that looks like. Now, I've hopefully convinced you that gender inequality is a real problem that we need to fix. If we can give both men and women the same resources that they need to succeed from the start, well, that would be a win-win situation. So I ask you, my audience, to, when the opportunity arises, do some self-reflection and have some difficult conversations for the hope of a more equal society in the future, in which anyone could be that ER doctor. Thank you.